IVM.
See, concept one, which works for everybody, is that the same concept of Veblen good, right? It's overpriced, it's over-engineered. Obviously, it should be of great quality because you'll be able to fool people only once. So it was what Japanese, Korean, Chinese brands were 20 years before we see them now. So 20 years before the Toyotas became famous, 20 years before all the high-tech Korean brands became famous, or 20 years from today, when the Chinese goods are not as great. Today, they make some of the best equipment in the world, bar none. I mean, they're making movements now which will put others to shame.
Hello and welcome to the Filter Koffee Podcast. My guest today is someone who's a veteran in the media space. Rahul Thappa is the managing director of Naviga. And in earlier avatars, he's been a leader with organizations like Fox, Astro, Mindshare, and Mail Today. However, this episode has nothing to do with the media industry. This is about Rahul's unique passion, and that is to recreate luxury watches, a hobby that he refers to as building Frankenwatches. He's an absolute romantic about the art and the science of watchmaking and spends a lot of his time and money in recreating the classics, but with his own twist. I spoke to Rahul about how to appreciate watches. What are the brands that he loves and why? And what goes on behind those stunning looking dials? And I think I'm uniquely qualified for this conversation because I'm the opposite of what Rahul is when it comes to watches. I know nothing. Zilch. Zero. So this should be a very, very interesting conversation where I expand my knowledge and hopefully yours. Stay with us. We'll be right back on the Filter Koffee Podcast.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. This World Yoga Day, Ashton is joined by global yoga icon and lifestyle influencer Sunena Rekhi. They talk about how one can take care of themselves using yoga. Catch this only on The Habit Coach. On the Filter Koffee Podcast, Karthik speaks to author Vineet Karnik on the business of sports. On Smarter with Sid, Siddharth explains how the human library in Denmark works. On Marathi Khirkitun, the Deshmukh share unique incidents they came across while reading. And on Ek Jiski Finance, Priyanka teaches us how to write a will. Just a reminder to everybody, the IVM merchandise is now available. You can go to the IVM Podcast website and click on the shop tab. Check out our first collection of t-shirts. Also, do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And I'd like to remind you all that it is really, really helpful for us when you do recommend this show or any of our other shows to a friend. Word of mouth is great for us, and it's really a great way for us to grow our audience and have more people for you to discuss your podcast consumptions with. Also, don't forget to rate us on any platform you're listening on, and you can also check us out on YouTube at ivmpodcast.com/YouTube. We have a list of the YouTube channels we are on. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Capgemini, Intel vPro, and Intel Future But Now Wonderful. Thank you so much for making this possible.
Welcome to the Filter Koffee Podcast, Rahul. How are you doing?
Thank you, my friend. It's great to be here. Long time in the making. I think more because I was avoiding this. It's my first podcast recording, and I'm a bit reticent of being recorded. But we are finally here. So thanks, man.
Yes. No. To put this in context, this is really, really a long time in the making. And I've been telling you that I've been wanting to do this for a very, very long time because I know very few people in my life who, over a conversation with a friend, would say things like, "Oh, I need to make an Omega tonight. I have to 3D print a watch."
Replica Omega. They'll come after me otherwise. Yeah.
So, but I'm getting ahead of the story. Tell me, we worked together and I've known you as a very senior leader in the advertising industry. Where does your watch story begin?
Very, very interesting. See, I can't say, it began when I was a teenager. I loved watches. Everybody in the family had fancy watches. They didn't. My dad was an aviator in the Navy. So he had a lovely watch, but that was in those days the only watch he had, right? Maybe just one more. I think he had a Breitling, which he had bought on one of his trips to Europe when on those exchange trips with other foreign navies. So, and that's the watch he always had. That's with my brother now. At the end of the day, after that, he had a Titan. That's about it. Oh, sorry, not Titan, an HMT. What am I saying? I'm getting ahead of myself now. Titan came much later. So he had an HMT. But that was about it. I never had a watch till till the 11th standard. And that was dependent on the marks I got in the 10th standard boards. And I got my mom's old Seiko, so to speak. So I mean, there is no romantic connection to that Seiko here. But now I realize that I was an idiot because when it stopped in about 2 years' time, it hadn't been serviced. I kind of threw it away and I don't know where it is now. And now I find that watch could have scored me a lot of money because it is one of the classics. So
you said it was in line with your marks.
Yeah. So I
how
had
much
to
did you score?
Not much. I think at that point in time, composite was about 87 or something like that. So if I remember correctly, 87 and a few here and there.
I was going to ask you if it was higher, would it have been a different watch?
No, that's all it would have been. So, man, we've all grown up in the same families. You get a watch, you're thankful it wasn't just another tiny watch. But then again, when we were kids, we all cycled through those little calculator watches, right? The moment you put them in underwater, when you were drinking water in school, they were gone. And you go back home and say, "Iske andar to yaar pani chala gaya." What do you do about it? They weren't waterproof at all. But then again, so my true journey with, I would say, interest in watches kind of began very late, 2017, if I'm not mistaken. I was in Hong Kong then. And I've always been a tinkerer, right, with something or the other. Before that, which was just hobby, electronics, this, that, and the other. I have a fairly serious DIY bug. So everything around the house, with the exception of plumbing, plumbing is a dark art. You don't know where the water is coming from, where it's going. So that's why plumbers can come home and say, you know what, Arey, this is a problem. Give me X amount of money, else you can suffer the leak. So with the exception of that, I do everything around the house, a little electronics, so on and so forth. So the extension of that, someone in office happened to buy a very expensive watch which looked the nines. So I asked him suspiciously, where do you get that from? And literally almost there, if that person has a Panerai, then I'm not doing very well in life. So anyway, it's one of those things, right? What is the Irsha? Yeah. So he said, no. It's a class 1 replica. So what do you mean a class 1 replica? The class 1 replica is what they usually call a Frankenwatch. It's made out of near original parts, as much as one can find. It's cobbled together and it mimics the true watch, and you buy it for a fraction of the price. So, okay, very interesting. Which means someone's putting it together. So yes, where's that? I mean, somewhere in, where was that? In Mongkok.
This is when you were living in Hong Kong.
In Hong Kong. So one of those big districts, electronic districts, basically anything in the world, and I say it with great confidence. Is there any spare part of any kind, of any machine, of anything physical in the world, including maybe an eyelet for a shoe? If you want to find it, you'll find it in Mongkok. Nowhere else on earth do you need to go. You need to go there. It's a tinkerer's dream. It's a tinkerer's wet dream, so to say. You go there and I used to come back with random shit all the time. So went to this shop. The guy comes out. He shows me all the classic wares. All of them are rubbish. So I gave him the reference and said, you know what? I want this, that, and the other. I wanted a Breitling as well. So fair enough. So after about warming up in about 20 minutes, he realized, this is not one of those, show me, and I'll come back in 5 minutes. Bhaiya, nikal ke rakhna, main aata hu. So he realized, ye leke hi jayega. He's going to pick up the watch. So he took me inside the shop and he showed me the class 1 replicas. And they were gorgeous, all of them. At that point in time, I didn't know what was what. I probably still don't know whether one crown goes with a particular watch and one dial goes with another. So I'm not a horology major. I'm just a person who loves the concept of how something which was invented almost 2 centuries ago, the intricate movement in it still controls our life. The entire time it tells is so beautiful. I mean, it does that with such precision that we won't be able to do it ourselves.
Yeah, but break this down for us. You used a few terms which neither me nor the listeners might be aware of. One is a Frankenwatch. Tell us why. What is it, and how is it different from, say, the replica you find in your roadside store? And the other one is, you said it's class 1 replica. Are there different classes in that? Break this down for us.
Yeah. So let me tell you about the classes. So the classes of replicas are, one at the very top, I've been told, comes a Frankenwatch. A Frankenwatch has many original parts. So it might have an original dial. It will most probably have original hands. Those hands, the loom might have disappeared. So that's fine because it's old. The case might be real. Most of the time, the case is real. Because that's where you can come to know. So the dead giveaways in fake watches is if it's very light. So I have another fake watch which just bought just for the heck of it from China, from AliExpress, which was a $18 Oris Big Crown. So I was just curious. I mean, it's $18 gone to the dogs because if anybody holds it, it's as light as cotton. But it's supposed to mimic a watch which is at least 150 grams or so. So, but anyhow, I just wanted to see, yeah, this is fascinating. Somebody's actually created something which looks just like the original. In fact, when it's new, it looks better than the original. So it's shinier. So that would be a real fake knockoff. It doesn't even have the name on it. It'll have Loris or something else printed on it, but it'll look just like the original, but it's got a quartz movement inside. It doesn't have a mechanical movement inside, what we call an automatic movement today, an automatic winding movement. So again, just to cut back, 3 types of movements largely, right? The quartz movements, which run with the battery because the crystal needs to be powered. And then you have winding watches, which are coming back in fashion now, as watches have become male jewelry, nothing else. I think you don't need to tell time with your watch anymore. It's all around you. You're in a car, it's on the dashboard. You're at home, it's on your PC in front of you, so on and so forth. And Alexa is telling you time, or Siri is telling you time. So, or you're glancing at it. So you don't need a watch to tell you time anymore. It's just male jewelry. Just the appendage looks very nice. You complement it with your clothes. Some say personality, though I don't believe that's entirely true. You make it your personality. So there's no watch which will go with your personality. Whatever you start wearing and liking gets likened to your personality. I mean, it's just the other way around, at least for me. So 3 types of movements. So the cheaper ones will have a really cheap as chips quartz movement, which is still great. I mean, it'll tell time beautifully. It might die out 2 years later, and it might die out 10 years later. But वो ये ना, it is a probability. So क्या गया उसके अंदर, how was it put together, what quality it was. So at the top will be your Frankenwatches, which will have original parts, almost like the joke, like they say, right? I'm saying that I'm with true deference to air forces around us, like they say, right? And an F-15 in a particular air force in our neighbors, those are Franken planes because they take parts from other planes and put them together so that at least one can fly. So that's what a Frankenwatch is. I mean, like Frankenstein's ones is the parts put together, different parts to create a watch.
But mostly original. That's the...
Yeah, I mean, it's original provenance, but the entire watch itself is not original because obviously there is... Yeah. You don't know when it's going to stop. You don't know when it was serviced. You don't know when the hands are going to fall off. Nobody's going to service it. You take it to an authentic service center, they might turn you out on your backside and say, kya laye types. And then there is everything in the middle, which will be fairly good looking, a case, but everything else is fake. Yeah, so usually grade 1 is these Frankenwatches, which are literally very hard to tell if you're not a watch aficionado. So that watch, incidentally, the strap on it is more expensive than the watch because that's the whole thing, right? You put a strap that's equally expensive or more, and suddenly everybody around you will be less likely to believe it's fake. So I ran that scam for a few days, but everybody in office knew, obviously, because they told me where to get it from. Till somebody I knew really stopped me and said, yeah, that something is wrong about that. I said, yeah, before you point it out, it is a Frankenwatch. So,
but what I'm fascinated about it with you is that you're not wearing that watch for the fake vanity of it, which is what most of its customers are intended for. But you're wearing it because you deeply appreciate, the brand, the mechanics, the history, the science of it, etc. Right? And that's why my next question is, while you in our conversations constantly say that I'm not a watch aficionado, you are most certainly a watch romantic, right?
Yes. So that romance started late in life.
Where did that start from?
So when I bought this watch, this is the entire kida in you when you're a little bored, right? And when everything is calm, and I've been accused of that by my manager several times, why can't you enjoy the calm? I said, no, I can't enjoy the calm because for me, there has to be something choppy and something complicated to sink my teeth into because, so things were relatively calm. I said, kuch to life mein, I need some kida. So when I went and put this watch, the guy explained to me in his little workshop how things were being put together. I said, well, if Yan can cook, so can you. So if he's doing it, why can't I do it? So then this fellow watch shop owner, the Franken watch shop owner, So he told me about this entire movement of modded watches. So it's called watch mods. Several movements, and we'll find several of these groups, and there are a few which are larger than the others, and two which are larger than life, which exist where people mod watches. So my first question was, how do you mod a watch? Because if I try to modify the dial of a Breitling, it's not going to send me a dial and say, "Oh, go ahead, Mr. Thappa, in India. Here, I'm selling you a dial. You do whatever you like to with it." So no, that's not it. Then I realized that one particular Japanese brand, Seiko. So Seiko understood very early that one, they were constantly on the back foot, right? I mean, nothing Japanese would measure up to a Swiss watch. So I mean, it keeps time like a Swiss watch. Now, in today's date, that couldn't be further from the truth, because the Japanese Seiko itself has beaten them to it. I mean, some of the Seiko movements now are far better than any movement the Swiss can make or have made in the past.
Is that right?
So, yeah, so the Grand Seiko, that entire range has gone places. So, but again, they're on the back foot, right? I mean, nobody believes it's centuries worth of conditioning. Whereas Swiss watch, fair enough, there's a fantastic quality. I mean, it's if you wanted to put your money between A and B, if you were clever, you would put it on a Swiss watch and probably not on a Japanese watch, because one, there are fewer people in the world who would know what a Grand Seiko is, and probably therefore the collectible value goes down because of this smaller number of people who would hanker after it, versus number of people who would want to buy a used Rolex. I'll talk about that as well, how they built that brand, and it's full marks for them. And it's literally a perfect story that could have been woven around that brand. So I said, fair enough. So point me to the right direction. He gave me a few tips on where to look, Facebook page, this, that, the other. And I went back home and started so I was just shadowing these groups for a good year. I said, yeah, before I sink my teeth into this, and then I found out that it's expensive. So it's not entirely cheap. You make a mistake, it sets you back and you start all over again. You have to throw away the hands. You bend it, you can't straighten it out. You throw it away. You damage the dial, it looks horrible under the crystal, you throw it away. You start all over again. So expensive. So for a year, I kind of shadowed these groups, skulking around, asking questions, figuring out how it was to be done. I think the entire romanticism built up by which time we'd moved to Singapore. And Singapore has a thriving mod community, thriving. And there are large watch mod brands there which sell aftermarket parts. Anything, everything you want is available there. So that
like
made
you have
it
an
easier.
automobile.
You have an automobile. Correct. Yeah. Like you have an automobile. But nobody's going to sell you a body for a car. They are not going to sell you the entire engine. But literally everything in a watch, right, from its case to the bezel to the strap to the case cover, to the movement, to the dial, to the washers, to the hands, to the movement, everything can be bought for a modded Seiko in Singapore, and not very expensive, and reaches you within the day. So that was.
Does it mean that the luxury watch brands now are recognizing this as an actual hobby?
Not all of
They're
them.
encouraging it? No.
See, they do that. So what some of them do is they set out manuals for you to maybe service your watch, but once you do that, the lifetime warranty lapses. But because it's a mechanical object, and if people want to fall in love with the mechanical object, like they say, right, with the car, you fall in love with it the day you open up the hood and you tinker around with it, you clean it, and then you say it's mine. Otherwise, it's just a vehicle. Yeah. So the same thing, you open it up, you tinker with it, you figure out what's good with it, and then you fall in love with the brand, which is what Seiko realized, that this is one way of keeping the middle absolutely verdant, where people who can't afford, well, still can't, 8 lakh, 9 lakh, 10 lakh watch or a 1 crore watch, you would go for the best you can get from a solid brand where it'll last forever, and you're happy with it. And guess what? You can customize it to make it just yours, which is beautiful, right? So if you ever wanted to make a statement of what is mine, which is where it came down to, you know what, now I can say this watch is mine. So I actually made it, and because I wanted silver on blue, so to match the predominant range of outfits I may have, or a green or an orange dial for a weekend t-shirt, this and the other. So now you've made something on your own, and you will absolutely wear it. Because you will wear it, you'll go further and further down the rabbit hole. So which is how I guess it works. And it keeps the brand name alive. So Seiko has literally kept the brand name alive. They are an incredibly strong contender in the middle. go towards the top as well with some of their watches, and the Grand Seiko vaults above everybody else. So if you checked out the Grand Seiko range, they are phenomenal watches. Phenomenal watches. So yeah, that was the romanticism part. I think further I got sucked into the rabbit hole, the further in love I came to be with, just making stuff on your own. Predominantly my collection is all dive watches. Though I don't go diving, I barely know swimming. I can swim to save my life. But for me, that love for watches, especially dive watches, and aviator watches. Obviously, my dad was an aviator, so brother is a deep sea diver. He owns and operates his own marine engineering company. So he's gone to depths which probably I can only imagine. And he needs those watches. He always needed those watches. Things like, the helium escape valve in a watch and this, that, and the other. You figure out, oh, wow. So I grew up around him, and like most kids, there's a gap between our age, significantly so that he had started earning while I was still in school. And obviously, when the oil and gas industry, he was earning a lot more than most other people did. So he splurged on watches because he loved his watches. And they also held him in good stead at those depths. So I idolized everything he did, the way he talked, the way he dressed, and especially then his watches, the mechanical part of me. So that's why most of my collection today is dive watches. And I try to create as many dive watches as possible. One, because I like them. And two, because they also look cool. They're over-engineered. So I have very few dress watches. So when people say, why don't you wear a dress watch? It's chalega, yaar. It's just jewelry anyway. Yaar. It's not supposed to look nice with a full sleeve shirt or whatever. So,
but tell me something.
That's the influence.
Yeah. So I need to confess, like I've done with you before we started recording, that I'm the perfect person for this conversation because I know nothing about watches, right? So which is great for the
I
audience.
know only little more than you. Don't worry. There are people I bump into is that, this person knows so much more.
But tell me something. We watch as a tradition, at least the advertising tradition of it, and even the product tradition, always associates itself with say flying or especially diving, right? What are the like? For example, I can't for the life of me imagine someone who's in the middle of the sea who wants to know what the time of the day is, right? What is the connection?
You actually do. So we are running on limited oxygen, right? And there is only then you can lose track of time because there's no daylight there. So if you're supposed to work for 2 hours, if you're on land, you can literally tell time by things around you. The context around you changes enough for you to tell, it's been an hour, it's been 2 hours, the sun's really up now. Started at 10, the sun's directly above me, so it might be close to noon. And then you check your watch, it's 12:30, little over noon, but you can't do that when you're in the water. When you're in the water, you're on a clock. If you lose track of time, it could be life-threatening because you might not have enough oxygen to go back to your chamber.
Okay.
So if you're on a tank, even so, you want to conserve energy because you can't be there for an extended period of time and then not be relieved because you'd be knackered. The next shift won't be possible. So for two reasons, because of the lack of context around you and the mission criticality of the task, because it's life and death at those depths, you do need to tell time. So the watch is always free, and that's why the loom, which is what is replaced radium, the luminosity of those hands, that little chemical now which is used is incredibly powerful, incredibly bright. On dive watches. So you take a dive watch and shut off the lights, it will shine bright. So that's what's supposed to do in those depths where sunlight doesn't permeate. It's pitch black. And all you have is your watch to tell time with, and that's why the bezel. So you see that rotating bezel on top? We usually play with it, right? You say it's like a fidget spinner, crick, 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 crick. But that's to tell time. So you start at, let's say, 15, and you want to mark the hour. So you bring the arrow to 15 to the 3 position, and now you don't need to tell time. You can only track the minute hand. So you track the minute hand, and every now and then it's 50 minutes elapsed. 60 and another 10 elapsed past the arrow. So it makes telling time simpler. Aviation watches, well, today they're useless, but in the early days they had a compass built in, the tachymeter built in. It could survive the G forces at those altitudes. It could survive the oxygen deprivation at those altitudes, or high pressurization, depressurization as well. So therefore those watches are over-engineered. Because they're over-engineered, and as you know, the male mind always it's an advertising trick we use, right? Everything has to be over-engineered to sell to a male.
Yeah.
You tell them dress watch, stylish, this and that and the other. Yeah, theek hai, fair enough. Yeah. So what? But you tell them, oh, this is engineered. It'll go to 200 feet or 100 meters or 200 meters. कभी जाएगा नहीं वो स्विमिंग पूल में भी, but he will say, अरे my watch can go to 200 meters. So, or I can, if I ever decided to fly one day, my own aircraft, I'll have this, and then the compass will tell me where I am if I got lost. So you will find. I obviously I'm making light of it, but that's the kind of reasoning you would get, right? You buy an over-engineered car, you buy an over-engineered computer, you buy an over-engineered everything. So we've used that trick in advertising to the fullest, right?
Forever.
Everything over-engineered, sell it to a male, he'll buy it. So,
no, it's our equivalent of you're worth it, right? I must say.
Yeah, equivalent.
Yeah. As you're talking, right? You're talking about radium watches and then your father's watch. It's a very emotional topic, and I'm assuming watches usually, for many people I know, is a very emotional topic, right? Like, I'm not much of a, I don't have a big shoebox where I keep a lot of things, but one of the things I keep in that is, the automatic watch. This is my first watch my dad bought when I was in school, right? For some strange reason, it was pink. And I got into a lot of discussion around that. But I still treasure that. I love that watch. It was like, I think, a Mickey Mouse watch or something like that, right? And then I inherited his HMT, which I wore for many, many years. And then so on. In fact, I have all the watches I've ever worn.
Hold on to the HMT. It's got great value, sentimental and otherwise as well. So it's back in vogue.
Yes. I'm going to come to that in just a bit. But, as you move towards some of the brands you mentioned, right, like Breitling and the others, what do you, if you were to do a one-on-one on watch appreciation, right, how do you know a watch is special? What do you look for? What should one look for when you're in the shop looking at different watches?
See, concept one, which works for everybody, is that the same concept of Veblen good, right? It's overpriced, it's over-engineered. Obviously, it should be of great quality because you'll be able to fool people only once. So it was what Japanese, Korean, Chinese brands were 20 years before we see them now. So 20 years before the Toyotas became famous, 20 years before all the high-tech Korean brands became famous, or 20 years from today, when the Chinese goods are not as great. Today, they make some of the best equipment in the world, bar none. I mean, they're making movements now which will put others to shame, simply because some of the older movements from the 1800s or the mid-1900s have the patents have expired. Now anybody can make them. So you and I could set up a factory and make stunning movements which the patents have expired. Just pick it up, replicate it, and Bob's your uncle. So coming back to that question. So one is it's a Veblen good. So obviously you've created that desire that is expensive. Not everybody can have it. You're worth it. So next time before buying a house, buy a watch. And I'll come back to that. That might just be the best way to use your money today, because I've seen that over the last 4 years, the watches I was trying to target have appreciated more than the apartment I have, and literally more than real estate even in Gurgaon, for that matter, probably even Bombay. So
we might as well go to the rabbit hole. We might as well go to the rabbit hole now since you mentioned it. But why is that? Why are watches
not all appreciating? Not all. Some brands, for example, Rolex, like I said, full marks to them. I mean, that is one brand which they have used their prowess, their engineering prowess. So I'll wrap up everything about their finesse, the quality in their engineering prowess. So the engineering prowess, which is powered by their entire Swiss tradition. So they've used that to the great hill. It's like us using Ayurveda, but we don't even use it as much. Some brands have started to use that India equals Ayurveda equals purity. Therefore, whatever that brand is producing, it rides on the entire Ayurveda wave. I'm just giving a loose example by saying, it's quintessential to India. So watchmaking is quintessential to Switzerland. They've made it quintessential. So is that not that others weren't making watches before that. The Germans were making watches, the Austrians were making watches, the French were making watches, and those brands are equally good. Mechanically engineered, they're equally well engineered watches. Those movements are also fantastic. But the entire Swiss tradition in your mind, right? Somebody says great engineering for cars, Germany. So whether it's a trope or whether it's ingrained in reality, that exists, right? I mean, high technology used to be Japanese. Oh my God. If it's Japanese 2-in-1, then it must be the best 2-in-1 in the world. And it starts with innovation, right? Every time you innovate, you do that. So So that's one. So Rolex has made that an art. So, and that's one watch which is appreciating, I would say, faster than the other as a brand. Generally, obviously, there are some very rare. There are some very rare pieces as well, and there are some modern pieces as well. So the Richard Mille, which you see, I mean, so and so basketball players wearing it, it's about $1 million watch or $2 million watch encrusted with diamonds. Those, because of the wearer and because of the material in it, because of the brand, all three put together are appreciating in value. But those are collectibles, literally.
But when you say appreciating in value, if I had bought, say, a Rolex,
okay, I'll give you an example.
The cost. Huh?
So one of my dreams has always been, and it's a shifting dream. I've never been able to realize it, because every time you see, when you're working, right, for a salary, every time say next bonus, I will sink into a watch. By the time the next bonus comes, the government's taken its share of 33% of your income, and then you say, "Yeah, what have I got left?" Then after that, if you have a large family, then everybody has dibs on it. Bonus. What are you buying? Where are we going for a holiday? So, okay. No watch. I will collect, and my next bonus, I will put it into this, and then I will buy a watch. So for me, that's a Rolex Milgauss. Again, over-engineered. So it can withstand electromagnetic radiation. I'm not going to be near voluntarily next to any electromagnetic radiation, but still, it's an over-engineered watch. It looks beautiful. It's simple. We moved past that when you were in, I think, at least when I was in college, chronometer wala watch, showing milliseconds, seconds, and everything. 5 hands going round and round, and say, "Yaar, kya kahan daud raha hai?" You're only finishing food faster than on a daily basis. It's got nothing to do with anything else. I've gone past that. Simpler the watch. Obviously, as you age, the better it is. Less is more, or whatever you want to call it. So Rolex is one. It's a beautiful watch, incredibly engineered, fantastic quality. They make their own movements, which is a clever move. They used to use movements from other third-party vendors as well. Some of the third-party manufacturers are fantastic. You absolutely don't need to make a movement anymore. But it's almost like a French bakery, for example. Just give you another parable, where they bake their own bread. Now, doesn't mean it's better than the bread you can get from another bakery. But we bake our own bread means that, this is your perfect place to have breakfast. I will have the eggs here, I will have bread here, and they bake their own bread and they brew their own coffee. So this must be the cat's own whiskers. Here's my $500 for a breakfast. So exaggeration, but you will throw down money because they bake their own bread. So they make beautiful movements, not to say others can't equal it, but because everything is in-house, it adds to the mystique. They last long because they're beautifully engineered. So you can pass them on. So they've consciously hammered home the point that it's Swiss-made and therefore the quality exists. And they've consciously also talked about the fact that it's engineered well. So they speak about it. They don't leave it at, because it's Swiss, it must be engineered well. It's Swiss, so it has to be engineered well. So there's a heritage we need to live up to. Then look what we've created. It's awesome. And we create everything in-house. So there is absolutely nothing from another party which is inside. This is all my creation. This is everything inside. Second, because, and thirdly, they advertise that you are worth it. Within that, they started adding that it's going to be passed on from generation to generation, that it's going to last so long that it's going to be an heirloom. It doesn't really die. So you'll pass it on to your kids and they'll pass it on to their kids. And literally it can run for 100 years if you service it well. Which is the other thing I want to talk about. These watches, mechanical watches, not serviced, that's why they die. Or they then need to be overhauled. Like anything, if you don't take a car for servicing, it's going to die, right? So a watch as well. Not as often, maybe once in 3-4 years. But a Rolex doesn't need to be serviced even that often. So the TCO, so to speak, is lower if you have it. And comes with some of them come with a lifetime guarantee. So when you invest in the brand mentally as well, and you spend that kind of money, suddenly it literally becomes an investment. So you know what? I invested in a watch for, let's say, 10 lakhs. That's probably their average cost. And because it's going to be handed over from generation to generation, its value in my mind is increased. And because of this entire movement, its value amongst people have also increased. To add to that, what they do is they create an artificial scarcity, which is good. I mean, I do that as well. I mean, it's like XUV 700 scarcity now, right? They're not producing as much, not because they can't, because they just want to produce less. But they've turned it on its head to say, इतना popular है कि waiting is 1 year. अरे तुम बना नहीं रहे हो. Which is why if you were making the same amount as you were making a Scorpio, you would be selling it, and the waiting list would be shorter. But it's the artificial scarcity. It adds to the allure. It's like, yeah, it must be fantastic if everybody's waiting for it. So they do create only those many pieces every other year. They raise the prices of their watches every year by a certain percentage, a high single-digit percentage in the very least. COVID, no COVID, everything rose. So organically also, a watch which I could have bought new before COVID, 3 years later now, is compounded at least 33-34% dearer than it was then. So if it's a collectible, the next person who got one of those 1,000 watches, who's now willing to sell it, he's saying a 33% to abhi hota uska price. Because now you don't have it in the market. I am the only person you can buy it from. So now the markup is 60%. So you'll pay because one, it's worth it. You're worth it. And second, you will also flip it to the next guy like that, right? I bought it at this price. Here is my receipt. You'll get a proper receipt for it if you bought it from a genuine aftermarket, from a genuine exchange. You've got the receipt. You've got its number. You've got its certificate. It's transferable. And so like a house, will flip it all over again. You'll flip it all over again. So the same watch which I was targeting, which I never got to, which was 6 lakhs before COVID hit, is now 11 to 12. It's real price. If I could buy it, which I can't, because you walk into a Rolex showroom, you'll be able to buy only the bottom range. They won't even sell you the mid-range if you're not already a customer with them.
What do you mean they won't sell you?
They'll tell you it's hai nahi stock mein. Oh, this has already been spoken for. You have that in the window. No, that's already been spoken for. So even a part of it is also, it's a bit skunky in the Indian market as well. There's a whole lot of black marketing going on. There's massive demand, right? So if the next businessman is ready to pay a ton of money for that watch in black, this is gaadi ke liye log dete hain, jump the line, they know somebody's bound to give it to them. So there is that also happening in the market, at least here in India from what I've heard. Second,
but I'm assuming they'll also be careful.
Who they give it to types. Yeah, but how does that matter for a watch at the end of the day? I mean, literally. I mean, yes, I've heard Ferrari also does that, right? Now that we can buy one, I have some little Ferraris 1/24th scale models bought from Hot Wheels, but that's as close one will get to a Ferrari in this lifetime. That said, even Ferrari vets the customer. So KYC hota hai, they say. And then they figure out whether you are worth giving a Ferrari to or not.
What's being seen in a Ferrari or being seen in Rolex.
Yeah. So the dealers will size you up. If you're not already on their list, you haven't already bought a Rolex sometime in the master registry, you'll be put further down the line. Because it's scarce, there are people who realize that one, either it's beautiful, so I want another watch, so I want another Rolex this year, or let me buy it because I'll flip this one. I'll flip the old one, I'll keep this one. Or I'll flip this one and I already have an old one. So because it's of great investment value, also because it's desirable, there are enough people with that kind of money to either buy it for themselves, who are front of the line, or buy it to flip. So
but I'm assuming
that's the reason why you will probably, it'll be tough as a first-time Rolex buyer to get your hands on a really good Rolex from a new Rolex from a showroom.
Got it. But I'm assuming this appreciation, price appreciation at some level must also be like a very conscious thing that is happening in the watch economy, right? Because people don't want the prices to drop.
Luxury watches as well. So just like diamonds, I mean, it's purportedly De Beers is sitting on a diamond stash, which if they are released to the world, you'll see diamond prices falling to even below gold, so to speak. And said that. So say most of the jewelers as well. But anyway, that fable apart. So most luxury watch brands have cottoned on to that. You know what? Scarcity banao. Don't give all of it away. If you create too much, you're going to flood the market. Just like inflation, right? You print too much, you put into the market inflation. In this case, it'll be deflation. Everybody has it. So what's the point? Now, everybody it's the same thing, right? Being classist about it. If one were to say, everybody around me has a Rolex, then it's just like an HMT of 20 years ago, right? Everybody has an HMT. So what's so special about it? Why should I pay you more for it? So it's a true Veblen good with scarcity built in. So that's why the prices are increasing. And coming to that question, therefore, if you were to, it's heresy. I brought that up at home when I was given a death stare. So I said, okay, you know what? I gave all the data, right? And you start giving the data of the dining table over to your family, and suddenly they realize that you're trying to con them. So I said, see, if you flip an apartment today and you sunk all the money into watches, you can buy 3 apartments after 10 years. You don't need to, and even real estate is not appreciating that much. So,
And you're being half serious.
No, I was on the verge of being serious. I was just testing the water as well. If they had wholeheartedly jumped at that, I might have done that as well. But then again, but that is true. You look at the data and you sync it into an aftermarket or a secondary market Rolex or a bunch of them, you might get more from that money 2 years from now, because there'll always be a market for male jewelry. Let's just put it at that. Or female jewelry for that. Not to say that, but females can't be conned as easily as males can. So I'll put it out there. So they are smarter when it comes to this. Say, no. Why? I mean, why is this watch so much more than it was the last time around I bought it? So yes, fair enough. So they're far more discerning. They can see through this great scam better than we can.
Yeah.
So for us, like, I can go to the moon.
Yeah.
Are you going to the moon? No, I'm not. So
I'm going to buy bread. But, I can understand why it was not a thing up until now. But, is that becoming a thing? Female luxury watches, which is not so much about the crystals in them, but more about the engineering itself. Do you see it around
those watches as well? So I guess about watches generally, I was talking about it from my perspective and from a male perspective only because of the over-engineering feature. Now, dive watches are therefore not as popular amongst women. As simple as that. I mean, not as popular. Yes, there are dive watches which they wear as well, but not as popular because they don't need to. It's not that over-engineered flashiness. Oh, look, my watch can go to 100 meters. Mine can go to 200 meters. So they're not in that game.
Right.
Therefore, that is more decorative. So you look at the range of watches for women, those are more decorative. So yes, those decorative watches are selling as well, and equally for probably higher prices as well, because of the jewels that have gone inside, because it's 18 karat gold, because there are half karat diamonds inside. So, but that is really, really serious money. I mean, when you start getting into that depth, you see those watches, you walk into any one of these Rolex or Naviga showroom, you will find just like children's clothes, right? I mean, you go to Oshkosh and you say, why is that shirt, which is 1/8 the shirt I am wearing, why is it the same price? So, and therefore you find a slightly smaller watch at twice the price of the other watch and say, what happened here? Because it's got platinum inside, sir. It's got diamonds inside, 12 of them, and this and that and the other. Fair enough. So it's equally big. So that market is also equally big. I was merely pointing out the kiddie pool pond, the little sandbox I play.
Yeah. No, fascinating and extraordinarily stereotypical because my wife hates flashy, girly watches. So she usually ends up buying male watches only because there is no watch manufacturer who appeals to her intellect anymore, right? So anyway, moving on to the question we were talking about before we went into this rabbit hole, right? In watch appreciation, if you're a first-time luxury watch buyer, if you walk into a showroom, right, what should you be looking for? How do you rate different watches?
It is a tough question. I mean, for me, it's binary. So I'd probably, I'd go for it's either love at first sight. So for me, it's just that. So either it's love at first sight. You see a watch and you say, the way it looks. Yeah. Everything about it just kind of clicks in that moment. It might not three months down or a year down the line. I'd like to put it this way, as much as I love evidence myself, but the human brain is a very strange, very, very, very strange thing. In that context, you fall in love with that watch at that point in time, which you really love. And it looks just right for that situation, for the context you're in, and you just want to buy it. So either there's that. Or the flip side is that the investment piece, so yes, I mean, that's somewhere in the center. That kind of justifies whether you buy that very expensive watch you've fallen in love with. Is it going to rise? Or is it something which 5 years later, might not be even worth its weight in the metal? So different matter altogether.
It's a very brand-led thing, right?
It's a brand-led thing. So the brand, like everything brand, right? It just gives you that push over the fence. You know what? Solid cheese, yaar. You can't go wrong. buying a Rolex or an Omega for that matter, or any one of these 10 or 11, the 30, I think, large global brands. But off the top, these two or three, you can't go wrong because one, everybody recognizes them, everybody appreciates them, and they are fantastic watches. So yeah, you can't go wrong. मतलब ये नहीं चलना बंद हो जाएगा या इसका डिमांड नहीं होगा. So love at first sight, powered by or pushed on by the fact that the brand is solid. And then the other thing is, for me, it has been the zero in this. That's the one. The zero in this is, can I customize it? So what can I do with it? So if I didn't like that dial, if I got bored with that dial, can I change the black to a white? So can I change the strap? So you wouldn't dare start changing straps every day on a Rolex. You'll scratch it or you'll tear the leather. It'll set you back by tens of thousands of rupees in the very least to change the straps. So you won't mess around with that. You leave it as it is. Keep servicing it. If it's leather, air it, polish it, and so on and so forth. Rather not polish it, but what do I say? You need to moisturize it. Otherwise the leather starts cracking, right? When you see 2 years later, you take out your watch and suddenly the strap cracks on you. It'll happen to the best of leather. So for me, it's either the customization piece. So can I tinker with it? Which is why I would still buy a Seiko. So if I bought a Seiko mid-market range, I've tinkered with two of those watches as well. Brought them home, perfectly good watches, broke the seal open, changed the dial. Why? Because I can do it, so I did it. So for me, it's that. Either you fall in love with the watch entirely, or you can do something to it which is uniquely you, and not pay the price for doing so, literally.
Right. You mentioned engineering prowess when you're talking about Rolex, right? And my question is, between brands, right? Now that everyone has had the opportunity to look under the hood and understand what every watch is, unlike an F1 car, it's very evident out there, right? Someone in Japan can open a Swiss watch and understand what's inside. What is the intellectual property in this industry? Like, why is
pure design? See, if it's a patented, so pure design, just like any other engine. Let's say a F1 engine. Every single engine manufacturer has patented that design. So I just can't willfully, at least in a world where, or in countries where you can enforce the patent, you can't be copying it and selling it. So therefore, for watch mods, I can create a replica of an Omega, which I'm probably going to do next, because I have a dial which looks just like one of those dials. I have the hands to match. I have the case to match. I have the strap as well to match, without the lettering on top. So it won't say Omega, it won't say anything else. So it won't say Yachtmaster and so on and so forth. 36th America's Cup, that was the limited edition I wanted, lined up a year in advance. The guy still blew me off. Yeah, sorry, we don't have it. I'll put you on the list and maybe we'll get it for you. I didn't get it. So that's just, you know what? If you don't give it to me, I'll make one for myself. But obviously, if I try and sell it, that is piracy. That is wrong, and one will get arrested for that, or at least there's show cause notice. So you can't do it for commercial gain. But so therefore, if you can enforce the patent, that's an intellectual property, and the IP built into into the way I look at it, into the brand as well. I mean, there is so much process put into the building of the brand that alone sometimes with the IP. That even if they were putting in a third party movement inside, let's assume Rolex did that for some reason, if they won't, the brand will still pull it along, because a lot of people really don't even care. If Rolex ne choose kiya hoga, to acha hi hoga. It doesn't matter. How does it matter? So there'll be that janta as well. Pure watch aficionado will say, I won't touch that Rolex. I'll take the next one because this came from a third party. I'll wait for a Rolex's own movement in the next watch. So, but those are only just that fraction, right? And when Nike sells to, as the adage goes, right, they don't make money of selling Nikes to athletes. They sell it to us who want to be like athletes. So I'm overweight. So if I buy this Nike Lunar Glide, I will be able to run at 1/6 the gravity, and I'll run faster. I'll slim down, and fantastic. Nike will help me slim down. Doesn't work like that. You buy a new Nike, bring it home, you go for a walk 3 days, then you put the shoe back inside, it never gets used again. But money was spent. And like that, the entire juggernaut rolls on. Yeah. So yes, the IP is in the engineering, engineering of the movement. There is IP in how the logo is milled, how the Rolex is etched. The word Rolex is etched into the chapter ring around inside the dial. So between the dial and the crystal on top, you'll see a little sloped ring around the side, around the circumference of the watch, with Rolex written on it. Most of the time, at least in dive watches and some of the others, that etching is incredibly insane to achieve. So there is, in that is their IP as well. Very unlikely somebody is going to be able to pull that off either. So that's the IP. So you can open it up, you can mess with it like most of us do, but you certainly can't recreate it. It's incredibly tough. And by the time you recreate it by spending so much money, why would you not sell it for the same price? You will think, why am I going to spend so much money and then sell it at rock bottom prices?
Yeah. You spoke about branding, right? And clearly, after speaking to you for close to an hour, it's very clear to me that much of it is in the branding. Right, how a brand over years, decades has built itself. Right?
But desire, yes. For a watch that invokes desire, branding, yeah.
Exactly. What are some of the brands that you admire? And there are two parts to this question. One is as a tinkerer, of course, for the engineering. And secondly, as a marketer, for the brand building.
Brand building, clearly, head and shoulders above everybody else is Rolex. Head and shoulders above everybody else. If you look at the material cost of any one of those watches, the material cost for all equivalencies, obviously they won't sell you their movement, so the movement is priceless, so to speak. Not all the money in the world would buy it for you, but if you would take an equally good movement from another Swiss brand, ETA, which has been used by Rolex in the past, sparingly so, so it was Rolex quality. Obviously, if you bought it from somebody else, and then realizing what if you make it, it's the equivalent of, like I said, we make our own bread, so it has a lot more allure. So no need to really buy it from somebody else. Let's make it ourselves. So all the money in the world won't buy you that movement. But if you were to put the material cost, like you have these electronics aficionados, right? They take a tear down of the new iPhone and they say, oh, it's worth only $150. Why is Apple charging $800 for this phone? But because it's Apple. Because now you can't put Humpty Dumpty together again and go to Apple and say, you know what, can you change this phone for me? Because it's got everything else built in. So for that reason, it's about, for let's say an 8 lakh watch, the material cost would be maybe $1 lakh. The rest of it is all added value on top. That's the power of the brand. So material cost is nothing, but the brand allure has added to everything, and now it's 8 times its price. So
who after Rolex? That seems Rolex, almost like an obvious choice.
Yes, obvious choice. After Rolex is Seiko. So Seiko is, again, the fact that for me, one, it was the first few watches I saw in the family. That's one. So I know that it stood the test of time. It's been around for almost 5 decades and I've seen it now. So at least in my mind. So it's been there. And at this one, they allowed me to get into this hobby. That's second. And then I realized when I started digging deeper, and then I'll be very frank with you, I started reading about the brand. I knew it was a great brand. It's there. It's a fantastic Japanese brand, but that they are world class and that they are class leading and class beating when it comes to movements and comes to engineering dawned upon me when I started reading about them. And they have so many firsts to this name. It's not funny. So you go out to the website. I mean, I can rattle that off, but tell
us a couple where they are firsts.
Oh, see, look at the first watch which had a television in it. Yeah. What? So if you were to look at, if you started looking backwards, smartwatches have, smartphones have televisions in them, and you can possibly watch video on your smartwatch today. But they were the first to get a VHF broadcast on a watch. So you could get a VHF broadcast on your watch.
Wow.
So correct. So that's there. Second, the first watch with a voice recorder.
Wow.
So again, you bring it back now. It's like you put voice recorder.
And you're talking which decade?
This is 70s and 80s.
Wow.
70s and 80s. So literally the first watch with a computer inside, and therefore it could be used as a scientific calculator. Not only a calculator, but a scientific calculator. The first ceramic watch which could go to a depth of 1,000 meters. So again, ceramic is brittle, right, in your mind. It won't stand that depth. But yes, they did that because they made it out of ceramic because lightweight and it can stand depths and many such things. So you look at those first and they're not trivial. These guys have been pushing the boundaries of watchmaking for a long time now. 1881 is when they were founded. So 140 years, and Most people don't know that. I guess 99 out of 100 people won't guess. If you ask them to how old is Seiko, some will say century because they can find it a trick question. But most will not know that it's 141 years.
And because it is Japanese, right? You tend to associate electronics with it, even though it is not.
No, it's not. Yeah. So it's purely mechanical. So yes, they did have electronic watches as well. In fact, the first ever Quartz watch in the world. So how did I forget that? The first ever Quartz watch in the world was Seiko. So can you imagine that? So they have the chops. They've done that quietly. They just haven't marketed themselves enough as they started doing with other things, but now they are catching up. And some of the Grand Seikos, the prices, I happened to visit Japan in 2019, walked into one of the Seiko stores, and they look far, far as brilliant or better than any of the Rolex stores you'll walk into or the Omega stores you'll walk into. Stunning. And the prices you see there, you'll start to think, hey, isme na kahin comma galti se lagaya hai. Where is the... So then you say, yeah, this is almost a crore for this watch. Okay. Slink off, because then you realize that the millions are missing. So they've taken 6 zeros out from the yen. And so then you have to read it as millions. Okay. Auqats yaad dila di. And then you slink out. Because some of those Grand Seikos are stunning. And I would kill for them. So yes, Seiko is the other brand which I idolize. Other beautiful watches. I have a Longines, 2 of them which were gifted to me. One by my brother. It's a dive watch. It's a beautiful dive watch. Another dive watch again by my mom and my wife. So those are the most expensive watches I have. They've been gifted to me. So I haven't really been able to top that myself. So I'm happy with my tinkering. So this is what...
As a tinkerer, which are the ones that you love to work with? As a brand, you spoke, right?
Yeah. So as a tinkerer, Seiko, obviously, because all the parts are readily available and an original movement is available. So you're not going to buy a hokey movement from somewhere which is going to die. So as far as tinkerers are concerned, that's probably the only ecosystem which is complete. You can still buy a Miyota. That's another Japanese brand. So 3 epicenters of, I think, movement making in the world. There is Japan, there is Germany and France, I think, put together. Some movements are made there. And then obviously Switzerland, the big daddy of them all. So 6 or 7 large movement manufacturers there, out of which 3 are huge. And Japan, there is Miyota and Seiko. Seiko is larger than Miyota, at least brand value or prominence. Citizen owns Miyota. So they make their movements largely for Citizen, and they started selling it to other manufacturers as well. You can tinker with that as well. And it's almost the same movement in its complexity as a Seiko, but I won't get a case for that. I won't get hands for that as easily. I won't get a replacement crystal for case even if I had one. So things become because it goes straight to a third-party manufacturer, and Zenith won't give you that. For example, if as one manufacturer, Zenith won't sell you their case, right? I write to them, so and so, can I have a case? They won't even answer you. So Seiko, because as a tinkerer, because that's the only complete ecosystem. So you can mix and match parts, and $250, maybe $300 later, you have a fantastic watch. It won't be waterproof till 100 meters like it's supposed to be, but it'll certainly go to 30 meters, and nothing will ever happen to your watch if you put it together well with those parts. So yes, Seiko as a tinkerer, unequivocally Seiko, but as a luxury brand, I would stay either between a Rolex and an Omega, simply because there are a couple of models which I absolutely love. And one day I'll be able to afford one of them or both of them as a collector. But yeah, those I love. And yeah, third would be Breitling. But those are very, very specific. They're large. You can have one. So again, the Avenger which I bought.
Which is the Breitling.
The Breitling Avenger. So I bought that. And if I can buy that original, then yes, that's probably far more gettable than the Rolex I want.
Yeah, as you speak, it is very evident to me that you're the most easiest and the hardest person to gift to. Right? We know exactly what you want, but there is no way we can afford it.
No. Somebody, for example, watch parts. So this birthday, I've asked for my wife to fund some watch parts for me. I am very easy to please. So I'll create the watch and that will be a present, but it'll be build your own present.
Talking of which, I heard that firstly, you mentioned $300-$400. This is a fairly expensive hobby.
It is an expensive hobby. So, I mean, you can buy a watch. So the same Seiko, if you put it together at home, if you went and bought an equivalent with the same movement, with the same quality, better quality, obviously, because it has, by quality, I mean, it's not been tinkered, it's not been opened. Its seal is intact. You have the facility of having it serviced, repaired if something goes wrong. That doesn't happen. So I can't take my watch to anybody to have it serviced. So it's far more expensive. So it'll probably be at least 50% more expensive than what you would get in the market, ready-made from somebody else. So ye fitur hai. This is just one of those. Why build your own car? You can go buy a decent enough Maruti, or a Kia. So you don't need to build your own car, but it's just that madness. That's it.
So how does it work? Your weekends, you have those. Sorry, this is my nth noob question in the episode. You have those things that watchmakers have.
The loop, yes. So a loop, because I wear glasses, right? So wearing a loop on top of glasses, either you scratch the glasses if you don't buy a good loop, and a good loop can set you back by about $150. So $150, you kind of chicken out. Say, nahi, I'm not going to spend that much on a loop. Again, it's going to be above your glasses, so it will slip a little no matter what happens. So I use something like this, which is a 10x magnification. So you keep it on your desk like this, and you keep the watch here, hold it up with this little thing prong, and this kind of is also a soldering. It's seconds as a soldering jig as well. But for a watch also, you can use both arms, put it together, hold it there, and tinker with it while you are watching, while you're looking through this. So you get that 10x magnification. So this is the real size of a movement. Just to give you so I just put up this AirPods cover. So that's the size of a movement. So this is what it looks on the front. So that's one of the Seiko movements. So this is the scale. So things become really tiny. So and you can take this entire movement apart. So this entire rotor, this is the one which charges your mainspring, which gives you the power, and so on and so forth. And the accuracy comes from the quality of the milling of all the gears inside, and the mainspring itself, how much power it can reliably give to the escapement and everything else inside. So then there comes the entire concept of jewels, right? So most of these gears are balanced. These moving parts are balanced on jewels, which were supposed to be rubies in years past. Then they realized that even because rubies are harder than metal. So then they moved to industrial rubies because one, they're cheaper and nobody's going to look inside a watch and say, they're not going to value the jewel inside because it's worth nothing, come to think of it. But that's how in the middle things sold. 17 jewels, okay. Oh, sir, इसमें 21 jewels hai.
Yeah.
So, sir, इसमें 25 jewels hai. After about what I've been told by other watchmakers is after about 13, 14 jewels, it really doesn't matter. It's a question of over-engineer, put more jewels inside, sell it, even if it is just sitting there with nothing on it. So you can market it, right, as 25 jewels or 21 jewels. So 14, 17 and 21 became eponymous with quality. 21 jewels. और उसमें कितना useful है किसी को नहीं पता, but it was part of the design.
But I'm assuming, as you're talking, there must be strict instructions to never sweep your room.
Yes. There
was really small part.
Yes, that you said that actually happened because I lost a little screw from the case which holds the movement of a screw which holds the movement to the case, and I got 3, so 2 is good enough for me. I'm not going to drop that watch, but I actually kaide se you should put all 3 screws inside. I dropped it. And for the life of me, with my eyesight, I couldn't find it anywhere. So 2 days, nobody swept the room. Till I used a little magnet, a very powerful magnet, and went square centimeter by square centimeter on the floor. It picked up random dust and the screw. But 2 days later, I found the screw. So yes, You're absolutely right. I didn't let anybody sweep the room for 2 days.
But I also heard that these extraordinary pieces that you make, you spend days, sometimes weeks making them, assuming. You don't sell them.
No, I don't. I can never get to sell them. So
you're too attached to them, is it?
I'm too attached to them. Because you say, "Arey yaar, ये तो मैंने बनाया यार, इतना सोच के बनाया, अभी नहीं इसको नहीं रखेंगे, इसको हम रखेंगे." And so a couple have been gifted, but only a couple, not more than that. Literally only a couple. For the rest, I say, "Nahi, kaise yaar, I can't give this away. It's so personal. I keep it." So it's becoming a problem now. If I had to buy another watch box beyond the other three I have to store even more watches in it. So they keep piling up. But
Right.
yeah, one day that bill is going to bite me when I take all of them for servicing and somebody's going to open them up. So this entire thing gets opened up. All the little parts come out. I tried that once, but I ended up with, when I put it back together again, I got some spare parts on the side. So I didn't know where they went. So I can't put it back together again. So Humpty Dumpty. So somebody asked me the other day at one of these parties. So, and I use this shamelessly. You make watches? Yeah, yeah. See, this is a watch I made. They asked me, "Ye kaun sa brand? I've never seen this before." The brand name, mera apna hai type. Half an hour easily you can explain. Then I said, "Oh, can you take apart a watch?" Half truth. Yeah, I can take apart a watch. But the complete is I can't put it back together again. So I haven't tried that yet. I'll try that, but it takes a lot more equipment and far more patience to put it back together again.
At least you can sell that. I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
You can sell that.
Or maybe you won't.
Yeah, see, for the movement, you will only service it if you took it back or took it apart. You could sell that service. So if one ever decided to master the art of taking a watch apart and putting it back together again, you can sell that service. Within this entire watch aficionado group, if 2 years down the line I start doing that and I become good at it, then somebody like me who's a newbie, when they take service kar do, please. So I'll service it, charge a nominal amount for the fun and the time you put inside. And so you can sell the service, but yeah, I don't think anybody's going to buy a watch which I made a movement for. Say, so.
Okay, last question. One of my favorite watch scenes in cinema was, Casino Royale scene where Eva Green is telling Bond, "Oh, it looks great. Is it Rolex?" And then he says, "No, oh my God." So you are in a store. What are you going for?
If you were to pit just the brands at me, I would still say Rolex. But yes, there is an Omega which I love, which I'm trying to score. And then there's the Rolex I love, which I'm trying to score. That, I think, conversation was more around the BMW, akin to the BMW and Mercedes. This thing of 3-4 years ago, people were accusing Mercedes of having fallen behind BMW. BMW was producing cars which are far more attuned to the likes of the 30-somethings, newly rich. I can buy a BMW. It looks like me, sleek, powerful, all the lines. Mercedes looks like my father's car. So why would I be seen in my father's car? And then Mercedes came back and now they have cars which look the nines, man. I mean, they would beat any others hands down. So that conversation was around that. They tried to, Omega wanted to position Rolex as, fuddy duddy hai. So everybody knows it. So kya? We are the BMW of that industry. Humko try karke dekho types. But yes, to answer that question, both are beautiful brands. Investment, I'd go in for a Rolex blindly. But yeah, both are beautiful brands.
Awesome.
The watches are really beautiful.
Rahul, we usually end the chat with asking our guest what he or she is watching, reading, or listening to. I know you consume a lot of content. Anything particular that's grabbed your attention, whether it's something you're watching or reading?
Again, I'll give you a very, very disappointing answer. What I'm watching is pure sci-fi. I'm a sci-fi freak. So yes, Obi-Wan, I'm rewatching.
You like it, fan?
Yeah, it's nice. It's building up very well now. It was kind of hokey to start with. Then now, if Darth Vader knows everything, then why is it that in the 70s when the first movie came out, he knew nothing about what was going on? So I mean, is there memory lapse between now a prequel to all the Star Wars movies and then where he is now? So I think it's coming along beautifully well. So you stop questioning all that. It's a story. It's largely there. Enjoy it. And I've started rewatching Expanse. I mean, that's my favorite, my most favorite, or rather, most favorite is wrong. That is my favorite show. So I've started watching it again for the 8th or 9th time.
Wow.
Now I've started watching snippets, started watching pieces of it. Then there is Star Wars, Strange New World, Star Trek, Strange New World. Sorry, what am I saying? Heresy. They'll kill me, the Star Wars fans. So Star Trek, Strange New Worlds. That. And yes, it's, as far as books go, trying to start educating myself in this entire the blockchain revolution. So picked up a couple of books. Let's see, it's for heavy reading, so I have to brush up some of my older knowledge and get through those, power through those. So yeah, as far as books are concerned, a friend's written a great book. So a good friend out of Malaysia, again the advertising fraternity. So I have his book. I've just started that, going through it again. The Made in Future. If you've heard of it, Prashant Kumar. So reading that as well. And yes, yeah, that's about it. And again, watches. So I've got one homage to Omega to complete tomorrow. So once it's complete, I'll show it to you.
Excellent. Look forward to that.
Likewise, my friend.
Thank you so much. It's been one of the most fascinating conversations I've had on this show.
I hope so, man.
Yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks so much, man. Take care.
Cheers. If you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcasts.com. You can also follow us on our social media. We are at IVM Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram. And if you want to reach out to me, I am _Karthik. That's Karthik with an H on Twitter. And Filter _Koffee. That's coffee with a K on Instagram.
Hi everybody, just wanted to ask everyone for a quick favor. We're running a brand survey right now and would really appreciate it if you could let us know what you think about the advertising on IVM. Go to ivmpodcast.com/survey and do let us know. As part of this, we'll be selecting 10 random participants and sending them some IVM swag, so do fill out those surveys.
पेश खिदमत है आपकी शान में हमारे अंजुमन से. Hi, I am Sadaf.
And I'm Arshit. खाने का इतिहास, economics, policy, psychology, सब है मेन्यू पे.
Only on the Nankali podcast every Wednesday, सिर्फ IVM podcast app या वेबसाइट पर, या फिर जहां से भी आप अपने पॉडकास्ट सुनते हो.